Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie, and today I'm doing a video response against... is that the way to say it? I'm doing a video response to Lolazbasement, who recently posted a video about his favorite subgenre in horror, which actually happens to be mine as well. And I am, of course, talking about the so-called found footage genre. He sort of did a list of his the found footage movies that he has in his collection, and I thought I would do the same, but I also wanted to mention some other found footage movies that you might not have heard about. So, first up, probably my all-time favorite found footage movie and my all-time favorite horror movie as well, tied in with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is a lesser known movie, which is called the Poughkeepsie Tapes, directed by John Eric Dowdle and Drew Dowdle. Hard to say. And they also, John Eric Dowdle also directed the remake of the movie Wreck, which is actually also a found footage movie, worthy of checking out. It's actually an entire trilogy, which is just called Wreck. R-E-C, although it's only the first two. Rec 1 and 2 are the ones that appear to be actually watchable. The third one is sort of odd from what I hear. But anyway, those are two Spanish found footage movies, Rec 1 and Rec 2. Be sure to check those out if you haven't. But what I was gonna say was that John Eric Dowdle, who directed the Poughkeepsie Tapes, also directed the remake of Wreck, or the sort of American version, which is called Quarantine, and it stars that girl from she plays Deborah in the Dexter TV series. But if you're gonna watch one of those, just watch the Spanish originals, which are entitled Wreck. So yeah, that's the first one, and the reason I really like this is because, for one thing, it is extremely grim. It's about, you know, this the police sort of raid this house in search of a serial killer, and they find these this extremely large amount of videotapes, like 800 tapes. And when they start looking at it, they realize that he has actually been videotaping all of his murders throughout his career, so to speak. And so all these gruesome videotapes sort of start to build up to this story about one of the most infamous serial killers throughout history, or something. The picture quality, it's all very sort of shot on video style, like it looks really authentic, and it's sort of spliced together with interviews and, you know, reenactments and whatnot. So it's like a fake documentary slash found footage, and I'm also gonna lump in documentaries or fake documentaries in this list, just so you know. But yeah, that's the first one. Highly recommended, although it is really brutal. And so, you know, I know a lot of people really don't like this because it's just too graphic and too violent, and they don't really see it as a good movie for that matter. But I mean, if you like Saw or stuff like that, I'm pretty sure you can tolerate this, but it is really grim, so just a word of warning. This has also not been released on DVD. This is actually a bootleg, originally premiered back in 2007. Next up, my second favorite found footage, which is Long Pigs, Canadian movie directed by Chris Power and Nathan Hines. Really epic, great directors. I've talked to them a lot through Facebook and stuff. And it's just a really clever, well done movie where two directors get to follow this sort of self-professed serial killer who is a cannibal, and he's sort of, you know, so it's a very sort of, it's more of a dark comedy and very grim humor, because it's more about sort of, you know, what is it actually like to be living as a cannibal in modern day society, and, you know, sort of how does that work? How can you be a serial killer, like be a cannibal, and make it work? So it's such a strangely twisted, you know, saga. I don't know where to begin. I think it's great, it's really funny, in a very twisted way. But it is also extremely graphic. Not so much extreme violence, like there's not a lot of people being like, you know, I kill you and stuff like that. but it's almost like a medical instructional video or something in parts, because he sort of makes these videos where it's all sort of very graphic, where he sort of shows his profession, and like, you hang the body like this, and then you cut here and cut here, and it looks so awfully good and gruesome that you're like, ugh, that's disgusting. But I mean, it's done, the whole story is done in such a playfully strange way, so it's so strange and so believable that you can't really believe it, and for that sake, it's sort of, you sort of have to stand back and watch it as a movie, because, in my opinion, I mean, the story itself is pretty, you might not believe it, but the effects and the way it's shot, it's just so well done that you sort of have to step back and just, yeah, that's not really real, though it looks really real. Oh god, that's terrible. I don't want to see that. Let's see, Cloverfield. I think a lot of people have seen this movie. Great movie, which is about a monster attack, and there's like these people who are already filming like a birthday party, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, and they're sort of caught in this big sort of not monster invasion, I don't know how you would describe it, but like, yeah, there's a big monster attacking the city, and so they sort of have to flee for their lives, and this sort of birthday party gone awry, sort of, that's how you get into this story. And it's one of those first movies which I saw, which sort of, enlightened my interest in it, as to, oh, so that's, we've all seen Blair Witch Project, which is a classic. To me, I know a lot of people feel like, yeah, Blair Witch not good, but I think that it is a classic in the sense that it did sort of, I mean, when it came out, everyone liked it. It's sort of in retrospect that people have been like, oh, it's not good. But I stand up for that. I like Blair Witch. I think it's a great horror movie. So yeah, that's it about that. But Blair Witch Project, worth checking out. Next up on my list, a movie called Megan is Missing. This was also a movie which is very close to reality, which is probably why it's so disturbing. So I mean, if you want to watch a horror movie which has some kind of redemptional quality to it, this is probably not it, because it's just a very grim tale, and it's a very, it's a realistic tale. It's about this girl called Megan, who suddenly disappears one day, and this is sort of a documentary following her, and we also get to like see parts of her video diary which she has been shooting. And as with the topic of child abduction, it's just it's a very grim truth that stuff like that happens. And this is a movie which, for the longest part, you don't really, for the most part of the movie, it's actually not a grim movie. It's just sort of unsettling, and then sort of towards the end, it sort of escalates a bit and becomes a bit more revealing. So I think it's kind of a slow burn, because for longest of time nothing really happens. You don't really get a sense of what's going on. But yeah, it's Megan is Missing. I think it's a good horror movie, but obviously not for everyone, because a lot of people don't like movies that are not, that doesn't have that redemptional like quality, where like the killer is finally killed or whatever. I guess a lot of the times found footage movies have that angle where there's no real uplifting part, which personally I enjoy. I didn't like it the first times I saw it, but over time I've really grown to enjoy found footage for what it is, which the reason why I like it is sort of that I've sort of grown bored of regular horror movies a lot of the time, because they don't feel, it doesn't feel realistic. It just feels like a movie, and found footage sort of helps to recapture that feeling that it's actually something that's really happening. It sort of becomes like ultra real if they do it well, obviously. So yeah, Megan is Missing, worth checking out if you don't mind a sadder, more depressing, dark story about a realistic topic. But like, if you have kids and you don't particularly like horror, or rather, if you don't like movies about child abduction or stuff like that, I think that parents in general might not enjoy a movie like Megan is Missing, because it's such a sensitive topic, and I can understand that a lot of parents or people who have children don't like that. So just a word of warning that, you know, it is a movie about child abduction and it is pretty grim, so yeah, might want to stay away from that if you're a sensitive type regarding that particular topic. Next up, I want to mention 388 Arletta Avenue. I don't know, God, I'm trying to remember what I thought about this. This, to begin, I mean, for the longest part while watching the movie, I felt like, you know, this is just, I don't know what I'm watching. Like, is this really found footage? Because, like, you know, you're watching all like these weird angles. Like, it appears that that what you're watching are like hidden cameras. Like, someone's gone around and placed cameras in hidden places, and I was just thinking, like, okay, did it just pick a lot of weird angles, or is this supposed to be? Is it part of the story? Why? What are we actually seeing? Because it looked like found footage, like a bunch of weird surveillance cameras and stuff, but I couldn't, for a long part, you don't really get an answer to that. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I do want to say that, you know, there is an explanation for all that, and I think that it should be considered as found footage in the end. So yeah, kind of a dark tale, but very sort of, it's a very sort of psychological horror about a man who seems to sort of be constantly tormented and sort of played with by this unseen assailant. So it's sort of got that sort of voyeurism vibe to it for the most part, and yeah, you know, while watching it, I sort of felt like, yeah, this isn't, you know, it's not really believable, or I'm not really sure what's going on. But I think you should check it out, and I think you should stick with it to the end, because, you know, I do feel that, you know, once the credits actually roll, it is in its complete form a good example of you know, interesting, sort of unusual found footage. And then I want to mention a lesser known movie, which is hard to come by because it hasn't been released, or rather it's been released on VHS, but it's out of print and extremely hard to find. It's a movie called Incident at Lake County, but it's also known as Alien Abduction, I think. I will list IMDb links for all the movies in the video description, so you can find out which ones they are. But anyway, Incident at Lake County is kind of an early found footage movie. Very sort of low quality, amateuristic style. But what's cool and funny about this movie is that this was one of those movies which was shot as someone's, I forget the name of the director, but it was shot as sort of like an early project for him, and then, you know, there were some stuff happening, like the negatives for the movie was destroyed, and like the company that released the VHS sort of briefly sort of went bankrupt and stuff. And anyway, and then someone took this movie and re-edited it into like this, oh god, what do you call it? You know, sort of like a UFO, one of these UFO programs on TV where, like, you know, this is the real UFO footage. You know, someone edited this feature film into this, you know, supposedly real UFO believers kind of TV show, and no one really knew what was going on, and this sort of created this myth about the movie actually being a real found footage movie, that, you know, that it was something that actually happened, and like because the story is all about this family who's shooting, you know, sort of videotaping like a get-together dinner, like, I don't know if it's Christmas or whatever, and then all of a sudden they, you know, there's like this alien abduction. They sort of see like light outside and like, you know, what's that? And, you know, it all looks like, you know, pretty crappy, like bad acting, but like this weird incident, you know, where, you know, it was posted as a real video, and it sort of started this whole legendary tale, like, oh, it's a real video and nobody knows anything, and like, you know, all the companies were gone and no one could find the source for this film, which is so weird. And I remember finding a link about it, because it's confusing, because there's also another movie from the same director, which is called the McPherson Tapes, and the McPherson Tapes is actually an earlier version of Incident at Lake County. It's basically the same movie, and I think it was like an early short film or something, and then he got funding to remake it as Incident at Lake County or something. But anyway, cool, early, somewhat unknown found footage about alien abduction. So check that out if you can. I don't know if you know, Google that shit, so to speak. Then I want to mention a movie which Lolazbasement also mentioned, which is Evidence. I don't actually remember if he tipped me off about that or if I tipped him off about that. But it's a really good found footage movie from recent years. I really enjoyed it. For the most part, I think it's notable because it's, you know, a lot of the times it's like the same premise. People are out in the woods, or they are, you know, whatever. And this is also one of those, like, you know, yeah, a couple of teens go out hiking, mysterious stuff happen, and you keep sort of thinking like, oh, it's just gonna be this typical sort of, ooh, there's like bad spirits in the woods or something. But for the love of God, just stick with this movie to the end, because it's like, you know, I'm watching it and I'm thinking like, yeah, this looks so and so. But then towards like the second or third half of the movie, you're like, what the fuck is this leading up to? And it's, yeah, I think it's one of the few found footage movies which really blew my mind in terms of surprises and the way it actually ended up, you know, the finishing line. Some parts, you're feeling like, okay, it's not really believable anymore, in the sense that, you know, why are they keep taking the camera, you know? Yeah, good found footage horror. Don't want to mention too much in terms of, you know, what we're talking about in terms of sub genres. I'm just gonna say horror, and stick with it till the end, because yeah, I think you'll be surprised as to where it's actually going. And then comes a movie which I guess you would consider more of like fake documentary, but it's got some found footage elements wrapped up in there. And this is a movie called Lake Mungo, or Mungo, I don't know, yeah, Lake Mungo, and it's this movie about a girl who goes missing. And it's beautifully shot. You know, it's sort of built up a lot by like interviews, talking to the family, and you sort of build up with a lot of segments to sort of create this story about what actually happened. So there's always like this suspense, which I really like, that sort of build up in terms of, you know, how the story is created, where you get a bunch of these interviews where you imagine that the person viewing the documentary sort of knows what it's about. But going into it, I think it's great in a sense that, you know, you can watch it, and the way they build this story up is that, you know, you get all these interviews, but you don't really know. It's like if a big event happened, like say 9/11, you know, 9/11 happened, and someone made a documentary about it. Everybody would know what the core is. You know, everyone would know like about this big event because there's like such a big media storm, and this movie sort of takes that aspect, as you know, we as the viewer are sort of, it's somewhat implied that we should know what this is about, in a sense, that we should be aware of this, you know, that we've heard about what has happened, and I like that premise because it's sort of, you know, then they give us these glimpses and interviews and stuff, and you sort of start to piece together what the story is and what has happened. And I don't know, I just really like that because, you know, it tends to go different ways and twists and turns, and all of a sudden you keep getting these new stuff that you didn't know were coming. Like, yeah, I don't know. If you watch found footage and fake documentaries which are built up like that, you might probably understand what I mean, but otherwise you might not, and I can't really explain it more clearly. But yeah, Lake Mungo, good, interesting fake documentary / found footage about a girl gone missing and sort of what that's about and what happened. And yeah. Next up is a movie called Last Broadcast, and The Last Broadcast, a lot of the time it's compared to the Blair Witch Project because they came out somewhat at the same time and share sort of somewhat of the basic storyline, you know, about people going into the woods and like about this ancient legend kind of thing. Now, I like both of them. I don't really raise one above the other. The only thing I don't like about The Last Broadcast is actually the ending, and not so much because it's a bad twist, but because in an awkward way, and you know, I'm not gonna spoil anything in terms of what actually happens, but in an odd way the ending moves away from being found footage. You know, like you got this whole big found footage setup where it's all shot with a handy cam and whatnot, but then when you get to the end, like, you know, just a you know, very brief, I don't know if it's 5 minutes or whatever, where you suddenly just stop playing it as found footage movie and suddenly just, you know, step out of that scope, and all of a sudden it's like it's just a regular horror movie, and like, what the fuck happened? And that really always had me, you know, I really liked the movie up until then. I thought it was a very good, you know, if you like Blair Witch Project, I think you will really enjoy Last Broadcast. But that particular part at the end where they just went away from being found footage, I found that so weird. I don't know why. But yeah, check that out if you're a fan of, you know, the kids in the woods and the weird stuff happening. Then we got a similar title, which is The Last Horror Movie. I know that there's also a movie called The Last Horror Film, but this is The Last Horror Movie, which is a found footage movie about a serial killer, and the thing I really like, I think it's a great idea, because it's about this serial killer who videotapes his murders, and then he takes this film which he has made or shot of him killing someone, he edits it into a rental videotape. Like, he picks a horror movie and then he, you know, like, plays the like the starting credits, and then he cuts in his movie, so people think they're watching you know, a rental horror movie, like a regular movie, and instead they're watching his homemade shot, you know, killing spree. And so this is sort of, you know, how we are let into his world. Like we because you know, yeah, we rented this movie, so we're watching this movie, and he sort of starts explaining, like, you know, yeah, I'm a serial killer, and you know, you think you might be watching a horror movie, but what you're actually watching is real, and now I'm gonna show you like what I do, and this is how I kill people. So I think it's an interesting way to sort of take this particular genre, which is already like real, but it takes an interesting spin on it. And it's a grim vision, not a lot of, you know, like humor or uplifting parts. So yeah, it's pretty dark, pretty realistic. Great acting. The guy in the main character really reminds me of Christian Bale when he did American Psycho. I think they're wearing they look very similar and sort of have that slick, strange, psychotic look to them. So yeah, be sure to check that out. Really interesting angle. And then sort of along the same storyline, apart from the whole rental videotape thing, we have Man Bites Dog, which a lot of people might not really consider it a found footage movie because it feels somewhat before its time, and this is a French movie in black and white, where we also, you know, it's about a serial killer who documents his killings on video, sort of makes like a video, you know, diary about it or whatever, and he has like a couple of friends who come with him to help him shoot this, sort of more like, you know, an instructional video, like, you know, oh yeah, I'm a killer, and this is the way it works, and I'm gonna show you how to kill people and get away with it. So I think most of you have probably seen this movie because it really is a classic. But if you haven't, you really should check it out. And you know, I saw it in recent years and was really surprised because I had no idea that it was found footage. You know, I didn't know that was the way it was set up. And now I want to mention one of the cooler found footage movies which I discovered, which is just came out a couple of years ago, or last year, I don't remember. It's a movie called The Bay, and it's like, imagine Jaws. Imagine watching Jaws. You know, the threat it's all about this small town community where something is wrong with the water. It's like, you know, it's not extremely clear what's going on. Like, you know, is it a virus? Is it like a parasite? Is it some kind of piranha-like fish? Is it a, you know, like, are we talking monsters or you know, what's going on? The reason why I compare it to Jaws is because Jaws, as you all know, is one of those movies which, you know, everyone keeps saying, like, you know, oh god, it's, you know, I watched Jaws and then I just didn't go near the water because it just creeped me out. This feels like something of a modern day found footage version of Jaws in that sense, because it will freak you out in terms of going into the water. And I'll just say that. And I think it's good, very nicely built up. You got a bunch of different sources for the video footage. Like, it begins like this typical documentation of some kind of parade or some kind of event, and it's about this local newscaster who's supposed to make this sort of mundane story about this small town where they have like a parade or something. And then it sort of transforms when there's like this woman suddenly walks on, and she's like bleeding, as she's got like blisters and stuff, and everyone's like, you know, what's happening? And it's, you know, like, has she been poisoned or something? And then she just falls down and dies. And it's like, that's like the starting point, and all of a suddenly, you know, okay, is it like, you know, is this an epidemic? Is like a hazardous thing going on? You know, it sort of keeps going in different directions when you sort of try to find out what is actually happening and what is the real threat. And the only thing you really know about it is, like, you know, there's something about the water. You know, that's the terror, and this, you know, this element where you don't really know what's going on, you know, where, you know, you're safe, but, you know, for how long. So yeah, be sure to check out The Bay. Really good new found footage horror, which I loved it. I thought it was great, and it's one of those movies which, you know, I would like to see a sequel for it, because I think there's more stuff there. I think it could easily evolve into a sequel, which on the other hand would be a very different movie, you know, if you take off from where it actually ends. But, you know, we've seen that done before. It can be really quite a good concept. And then I want to mention VHS and VHS 2. I'm going to mention these back to back. I really like these. You know, it's like these different directors who have each made their own segment, and yeah, I mean, most people probably know this already, you know, what the movies are about. But I really like them. It's an interesting, diverse look at the genre. Seeing as it's different directors making their own segments, but it's all combined into one story through this sort of arc story surrounding the source of the various video segments, so to speak. So yeah, good. I think VHS and VHS 2 are some good starting points if you want to get into found footage and sort of know what it's about, because it does give you a sort of broad spectrum of what found footage can be, because it's, you know, different small stories from different directors in the same genre. So yeah, check out VHS and VHS 2 if you want to get some good idea of what found footage can be, I guess. Then I want to mention Apollo 18, which I know Lolazbasement also mentioned. It is a found footage movie created like a secret documentary or something from NASA about this space exploration gone wrong, which is then, it's called Apollo 18, and the reason why you've never heard of Apollo 18 is because, well, you know, this is why you've never heard of it, because they kept it secret. That's sort of like the whole teaser promo idea. Tagline, most people call that. But yeah, I forgot that that's what it's called. But I liked Apollo 18. It's definitely a less is more kind of movie, and it's more about build-up, and there's not a lot of payoff. I mean, I think that the ending or ending scenes is good, but I would love to have seen more of it. I would have loved if it had turned in to some kind of, you know, really high tension horror towards the end, and that they would have expanded on what happens in the late scenes, so that we would, you know, it feels like now we just get a glimpse of what horror, you know, what the horror part actually is. It's more like build up, and then you sort of like get like, oh, like, you know, that's cool, and then it's over. So I think it's a good movie, but I would have liked that they would have expanded more on the whole payoff. So yeah, slight minor for that, but apart from that, I think it's a good film. So yeah, and it's also fun that it's a sci-fi found footage, because that's one of those, you know, slightly rarer sub genres within found footage. And yeah, ironically, the next movie I'm gonna mention is also somewhat of a sci-fi movie, and that is the movie Chronicle. I really liked this. It's about these teenagers who suddenly, through a series of events, get superpowers. And I think this is interesting because it's one of those few movies which has sort of taken the angle that, you know, would superpowers actually be something that would be good for you, or would it in the end sort of corrupt you and make you do bad things? And I really like that, because it takes something of a reality spin on superpowers. You know, sort of, it creates, I'm not saying it's a believable movie, but I'm saying that it takes a different spin on what, you know, if you actually got superpowers, what would it be like? Would it be easy? Like, you know, oh yeah, I can do everything. Or is there a darker side to it? Like, what, you know, if you have no limits, then would you actually set limits for yourself? Or would you do anything you could and in the end sort of become corrupt and bad and think that, you know, it's like, would you get this god complex and would it eventually make you the supervillain rather than the superhero? So, yeah. Interesting, cool, good-looking sci-fi found footage, I guess. Then we got a movie which I actually found on Netflix. Had never heard about it, just found it and, you know, quickly read that it was found footage and just felt like, you know, yeah, go. And this pleasantly surprised. It's a movie called Crowsnest. It doesn't have too much high ratings on IMDb as I recall. But I don't really see why. I mean, I liked it because it's got like a simple storyline, you know. It's about these kids who go out camping, like on a camping trip with a car, and then all of a sudden they start getting followed and harassed by this RV who follows them, and like it's really small roads, and you know, tries to run them off the road and whatnot, and a bunch of stuff happens. It, you know, it sort of escalates into this tale of terror, sort of along the same lines like the movie Duel, which is a great classic, even though it's not found footage, but it's sort of, you know, it's got that aspect, like, you know, this psychological horror movie where, you know, there's like this guy in the other car who terrorizes you, and I think that's it's a simple, good story, and I thought that, you know, this movie, you know, it did something nice with it. It might be maybe not terribly unique, but in found footage, you know, I think it worked. Thought it was good. Had some really good horror elements, which I didn't, you know, there was a lot of stuff there which I didn't expect to happen, like good surprises, and it sort of leaves some stuff to the imagination. You don't really get an explanation of everything, but at the same time, you know, I thought that worked. Yeah, I don't know, I think it should have a high rating. I thought it was a lot better than I thought it would be based on ratings. Next up, we got a movie called Haunted Changi. I forget, this is a movie from, I don't even remember. I'm a little bit blurry on the language because it was a long time since I saw it, and I didn't particularly like it. So this, you know, most of the movies I've talked about are things I think you just should check out. Haunted Changi, maybe not so much. I don't think it's a good example. But on the other hand, on the plus side, it has really good atmosphere. Because it's this movie about, it's like some high school kids or whatever, and they want to do a documentary about this abandoned mental asylum or something, and it's like this whole story in their country, like where there's a lot of legends and stories, like ghost stories and stuff like that, like urban myths and such, about this haunted Changi, and so they want to go there to sort of make a documentary about it and try to capture ghosts on film and whatnot. And so I really liked that because I really liked the whole atmosphere. You know, I'm a fan of urban exploring and stuff like that. So I thought that, you know, all the sceneries really spoke to me. But overall, you know, I thought that the movie ended up, I don't know, it didn't give me anything new or surprising. It felt like it was, you know, more of a typical jump scare kind of movie, and it didn't really, I don't know, it didn't pay off for me. But, you know, a lot of people might like it, so I thought it's worth mentioning if you're, you know, if you want to find what you can find, so to speak. Then we got another movie also mentioned by Lolazbasement, which is called The Lost Coast Tapes. And this is essentially a found footage horror movie expedition set out to find Bigfoot. Which, you know, I like the premise of that. I thought it was really interesting. And I thought the movie was pretty decent. Even though, you know, it has kind of an odd ending twist. Which, you know, I didn't mind. I thought it was pretty interesting choice. But the thing that I think is lacking in the movie is that there's not a lot of action in terms of payoff. You don't, you know, throughout the movie it's, you know, it's just like a bunch of teasing, which, you know, I think that only works so far. Eventually you're gonna have to want to see something, and if it's not like, you know, it's not it's so little, and that doesn't really cut it. But on the other hand, if you don't mind like the less is more thing, give it a watch, because, you know, it's interesting in a sense. You know, I like the whole Bigfoot expedition thing. And God, what do we have left? Oh yeah, right. Another movie which I watched more recently is a movie called Amber Alert. Trying to remember where I found it. I think this was also on Netflix. And I really liked this because it felt very real. I thought that the acting was really good. I know that a lot of people have been like, you know, oh, this is bad acting. But I think that, you know, I don't know. I think it was probably the fact that, you know, when... Okay, let me start over. This is a movie about an Amber Alert, and I had never heard of this term. But an Amber Alert is when, like in America or wherever, you have these things on highway where, like, you know, there's like these big road signs, like, you know, with lights, like LED signs, where you can display a message. Like if you have like an accident, people can know about it. And there's also something called an Amber Alert, which is when, say that a child is abducted, or the police is looking for a serial killer or whatnot, and they sort of, you know, they know what car he's driving, and they want the public to be on the lookout. Then they can post this message on the board, which is called an Amber Alert, and then people will know, like, you know, oh, please be on the lookout for a blue Honda because this person has blah 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 blah. So that's where the term comes from. And then the storyline goes like, there's this couple who are making like a audition video for some kind of TV show. I forget what it is, actually, but from what I recall, they're making an audition video of some kind. And so they're filming, you know, being on this road trip, and then all of a sudden one of them spots this car which has been alerted in an Amber Alert, and it says, like, you know, be on the lookout for this car, and, you know, I don't know if it says, I can't remember what it says. But anyway, so they like, okay, that's the car, what do we do? And they call the police and whatever, and the police are like, you know, sorry, we don't have anyone in the area, you know, we can't expect you to follow the car, but obviously you can, you know, we can't stop you, so, you know, if you decide to follow the car and alert of where it's going, you know, you sort of have to keep your distance and whatnot. So obviously they decide to follow the car, otherwise, yeah, not much of a movie here. But the thing I really liked about this is that the reactions and the way the character acted, I wasn't bothered about the acting. I thought it was really good. But the thing that probably captivated me and made me think, you know, made me think that it was good acting, was that I sort of saw myself in the same situation, and like, you know, like that, you know, it's this couple, and you know, one of them thinks like, you know, we shouldn't get involved, and let's just, you know, this is not our fight, and sort of maybe like, you know, they want to help, but at the same time, Jesus fucking Christ, we don't really know what's going on. You know, it could be anything. Maybe it's a serial killer, maybe it's someone who abducted a small kid. I mean, what do we know? Or maybe it's nothing. You know, why should we get involved not knowing what's going on? You know, we don't want to get into anything. And I think, you know, that's one of those things which a lot of people would probably act that way. Just think like, yeah, someone will take care of that. You know, we've done our thing. Let's just, you know, not go any further. But this couple decides to go further, and it's a lot about sort of the choices they make, and like, you know, the girl is really hysterical, and she's like, you know, like, look, like, what if it's a kid? What if this kid gets murdered because we didn't do anything? And the boyfriend is like, well, you know, we don't know that. And I really liked that sort of conflict, because it's one of those things which I felt that I could recognize myself from my own life. Like, my girlfriend and I are very different people, and we sort of react very differently. And I felt like, you know, it was a really interesting contrast, and sort of you know, reflected a lot of interesting things about how people react in a crisis. Like, you never really know how you're gonna act when push comes to shove. You know, are you gonna be like the hero type, or are you gonna be like the person who takes, you know, safety first, and maybe makes like the rational sort of sane choices? I mean, it's all like, you know, it's not black and white. It's a very sort of gray area, and I thought that that's what was interesting, because it's sort of connected to, you know, what I put myself in that position as a viewer, think like, you know, what would I do, and, you know, what would my girlfriend do, and whatever. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting dynamic, well acted, and it became really suspenseful. I thought it was really on the edge of my seat, thinking like, you know, where is this leading? And yeah, it's got some really good twists and turns, a lot of suspense, good horror, slow burn, but never a dull second at the same time. So yeah, highly recommended. It's called Amber Alert. And oh, I don't even know how long I've been talking, but it feels like ages. But I do think that that's actually all the movies I got to recommend. Or no, one more which comes to mind. I think it's a Spanish, Portuguese, something like that. A movie called Atrocious. I'm trying to remember. Oh, this becomes such a crappy ending. From what I recalled, I enjoyed Atrocious. It's got, you know, something of that Blair Witch vibe, sort of, you know, night vision shooting, people running around in the dark. But at the same time, yeah, good suspense, good build-up. And yeah, but that is it. Thank you very much for watching, and as usual, I hope you will check out these movies and maybe get interested in the found footage genre in general. So yeah, hope to see you all next time.